DJ Holy Vogue. Yo!
You're locked into Point 5 Creative Studios, where Africa's stories aren't just told, they're produced. News, politics, entertainment, films that move the continent. We bring the truth, the fire, the creativity. Your world, powered by African storytelling. Point 5 Creative Studios. Point 5 Creative Studios. Point 5 Creative Studios. Point 5 Creative Studios. Point 5 Creative Studios.
Greetings, fellow Zimbabweans. I've got something that I do like to share with you concerning our country, our future, ourselves. And I've discovered that we can't just be a people without a solid opposition political party that is opposed to ZANU-PF, seeing that the vast majority of our people, they are actually against ZANU-PF. Now, why do we need a political party, considering the fact that we have almost over 140 opposition political parties in Zimbabwe? And most of these political parties or their leaders, they are being suspected of being puppets of ZANU-PF, of being funded by ZANU-PF, whether directly, indirectly, or whatsoever. Now, the basic question is, do we have a solid political party to rally behind, to support, to stand with? That is the first question. That is the first question you need to ask yourself. I need to ask myself. We need to ask ourselves. And then we found that people, they really loved the MDC of the late Morgan Tsvangirai. And how do we know it? There was a time when there was a crisis, a problem within the MDC of Morgan Tsvangirai, and some leaders, they do split out, and we ended up with the MDC Tambara, MDC Nue, MDC Tomato, MDC Onion, MDC Orange, MDC this and this, MDC New, MDC whatever. And those guys who left Morgan Tsvangirai, they ended up coming back to Morgan Tsvangirai, and they remanufactured the MDC and they came up with the MDC Alliance. So what happened to the MDC Alliance? By then, ZANU-PF had managed to poison Morgan Tsvangirai. And he is no more. He died. Now, what do? We found that within the MDC, the second problem again, second time, and they were fighting for power. And Chamisa left out and he founded the Triple C, whose regalia was yellow, and everybody followed the Triple C. I think the majority of the Zimbabweans, they loved the party. They gave big support to Nelson Chamisa in the name of Citizens Coalition for Change. And guess what happened? A problem arose within the Triple C and he resigned. And then we heard about a new political party called the Blue Movement. And we saw leaders like Gift Ostalos and the likes rally behind the so-called Blue Movement, and it never, who knows what happened to the Blue Movement? Then next, people gave up all the hope on opposition, and some people started running back to ZANU-PF. Strong members of Triple C started joining ZANU-PF. We seen the same thing happen during the days of MDC Alliance. under the leadership of Nelson Chamisa. We saw Jabo, no Tembias go back to join ZANU PF. Now the question is, we can't be a people. We can't just roam around. We can't just be a people without a solid political party to rally behind to support. What do we do? Should we go and join the Triple C of Shabab? I don't think people like it, because these Shababs are being accused of being puppets of ZANU PF. So should we go and rebuild the MDC of Morgan Tsvangirai, which is now currently under the leadership of that guy who once received a farm and the Mercedes-Benz, Monzor, who received it from ZANU PF? People, they don't want that. But considering the fact that we have thousands and thousands of people who got injured, who financed the MDC, and thousands of people who lost their lives in the name of ZANU PF, should we just forget about ZANU PF, or should we go back and rebuild on the foundation of Morgan Tsvangirai a proper, a genuine opposition political? What do we do now? What did we do? That is the question. Should we go to the Triple C of Shabango, which was left behind by Nelson Chamisa and Ostolas, Gift Ostolas and Mahere and others? What did we do next? Should we go back to the ruins of the MDC of Morgan Tsvangirai and start from there? But at the same time, the very MDC of Morgan Tsvangirai, it is also being accused of being infiltrated by the ZANU PF, misled by ZANU PF. These two major political parties are accused of being hijacked by ZANU PF. So what do we do next? Because we have people who have some scars. We have people who got injured fighting for liberation, fighting for freedom, fighting for a government change. How do we do it? Because as long as we do not have a proper genuine opposition political party, you shall find that we shall start to hate one another. We are going to have tribalism. Then we end up whereby the Velas, they will isolate themselves, Shonas, they will isolate themselves, and within the Shonas cluster, the Tonga will also isolate themselves, the Zezuru will isolate themselves, the Karanga will also isolate themselves, the Samanyika, they will isolate themselves, the Ndau will isolate themselves, the Venda will isolate themselves. The Xhosa living in Zimbabwe will start to isolate themselves, and the Chewa people in Zimbabwe will start to isolate themselves. So what do we do now? Considering the fact that we are now living in the days of globalization, whereby if you need to be an American, you can go to America and become an American citizen. If you need to be an Australian, you can go and become whatever you want to in Australia or in New Zealand or in the United Kingdom. Or a Chinese can become a Zimbabwean, or a Chinese can become a Canadian. That is globalization, and you cannot defeat globalization, and nobody can defeat globalization. The world is now interconnected. So what did we do? What did we do? We're facing ZANU PF because the situation right now, I will be honest with you today that elections in Zimbabwe, they are in 2028. So this thing of Vision 2030 is to destabilize the opposition, the people, to think there is no election. ZANU PF want people to think there are no elections in 2028, yet day and night. ZANU-PF is a campaign group to do something. Wait for 2028. Can't we have a proper, bigger junior opposition? If we don't, we risk creating another Zoom political party. ZANU-PF is going to fund a robust, a strong opposition political party like Zoom. And a few days before elections, Edgar Tegere resigned. And he said, I'm going back to ZANU-PF. We saw Nelson Chamisa when SADC wanted to stop Emerson Mnangagwa being endorsed to be the Zimbabwe. And SADC said, you can bring the V11 to the court. And the members of Triple C who submitted the V11 to Chamisa withheld the V11. After withholding the V11, Chamisa resigned. So SADC could not come into Zimbabwe because the very president whom they were supposed to represent resigned. That is why you hear there are more accusations against Chamisa being said he's a sellout, he's a puppet, he's a member of ZANU-PF. That is the reason. Now, let's leave Chamisa alone because he said, I've resigned politics. Let's leave Chamisa alone. I think we need a robust junior opposition political party. Consider that we have thousands of people who died, who got injured, who got scars, who gave all the money in the name of MDC. And now it is lying in the ruins. But we can resurrect it. Can we resurrect it on a global level? Maybe MDC global, I don't know. What is your opinion? What do you think? We can't just be a people who say things are difficult in Zimbabwe. We don't have an opposition political party in Zimbabwe. We wish if we had a union. We are responsible for creating the very opposition we like, the very opposition that will stand before ZANU-PF. Even if we say we need to stand on the military grounds against the ZANU-PF, but we still need our own opposition political party. We need a political party like